In early 2024, the street price of a standard DDR5 module climbed. Not because the factories ran dry, the warehouses at Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron were not empty, they were retooled. The pressure on your RAM bill did not come from a factory that could not keep up. It came from 3 boardrooms that decided not to. That decision moved through the supply chain in 4 steps, each graded for how solid the ground is, and at the far end sits a Chinese foundry most Western buyers have never heard of that may now be the most consequential actor in the whole story. Start with what changed in 2023 and accelerated through 2024. Training and running large-scale artificial intelligence models at the level the major cloud providers and model developers were deploying required a kind of memory that conventional double data rate 5 modules cannot deliver at the speeds those workloads demand. The flagship accelerator chips from the major chip designers specified a different product tier entirely: high bandwidth memory. High bandwidth memory stacks chips vertically and delivers data to the processor at rates that ordinary modules cannot approach. This was not a preference, it was an engineering requirement baked into the product specifications and confirmed in publicly filed technical documentation and earnings disclosures from the memory makers themselves. Link 1 grades confirmed. Here's where the physical constraint enters. High bandwidth memory is fabricated on the same wafer starts as conventional double data rate 4 and double data rate 5. The same cleanrooms, the same process tools, the same silicon. When demand for high bandwidth memory expanded sharply, it did not expand into new capacity that had been sitting idle. It expanded into capacity that was already producing commodity memory for consumer and enterprise buyers. That competition between product tiers for the same physical resource is the mechanism the rest of this chain runs through. Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron each faced a capital allocation question that was, in isolation, straightforward. High bandwidth memory carries significantly higher margins per wafer than commodity double data rate 5. The margin differential between those two product tiers is reported consistently in analyst coverage from research firms tracking the memory sector, and it appears in the language of investor presentations and earnings calls across 2023 and 2024 from all 3 producers. The math pointed in one direction. All 3 shifted meaningful portions of their wafer capacity toward high bandwidth memory production. Commodity output contracted, not because global demand for memory fell, not because a disaster took a fab offline, because supply was redirected toward the higher return product. Link 2 grades confirmed. Think of it as a bakery that converts its ovens from sandwich loaves to artisan croissants because croissants sell for 4 times the margin. The wheat supply did not change. The bakery did not close. The shelf where you used to find bread is just empty now because the ovens are busy with something more profitable. The commodity double data rate 5 shelf emptied the same way. Consumer and enterprise prices for standard memory modules rose through that period. The buyers experiencing those increases had no obvious alternative. The market for high-volume commodity dynamic random access memory is effectively a 3-firm structure globally, and all 3 firms had made the same directional choice at roughly the same time. That simultaneity is where the legal argument enters. A civil complaint filed in California federal court carrying 17 plaintiffs alleges that the timing and scale of the coordinated capacity pullback from commodity memory does not reflect 3 companies independently reading the same market signal and arriving at the same conclusion. The suit's theory is that the alignment constitutes price fixing under antitrust law, that the producers acted together rather than in parallel. The case is pending. No court has ruled on the merits. No finding has been made, but the filing's existence is itself a data point. Attorneys and institutional plaintiffs reviewed the documentary record of when each company made its capacity announcements, how the language in those announcements tracked, and concluded that the pattern was worth litigating. Link 3 grades reported. Here is the link that the whole chain hangs on, and it is worth being precise about why. That all 3 producers shifted capacity toward high bandwidth memory is confirmed in their own public disclosures. That they did so at roughly the same time is documented. What is not established, and what the California litigation will have to prove, is whether the simultaneity reflects communication rather than independent response to identical incentives. 3 firms facing the same margin signal, the same customer demand, and the same accelerator product roadmap from the same dominant chip designer could rationally make the same choice without ever speaking. The lawsuit's theory requires more than parallel behavior. It requires evidence of coordination. That evidence has not been made public. The chain from confirmed capacity shift to alleged price fixing passes through ground that the current record does not yet support as confirmed. The shortage did not come from a lack of chips. It came from a choice about which chips to make. The scarcity the market felt was manufactured at the planning stage, not at the fabrication facility. That inversion is the analytical core of what happened, and it matters beyond the legal question. Whether the coordination is eventually proven or not, the mechanism the buyer experienced is the same. Price was set by where capacity was aimed, not by how much total silicon existed. The foundries did not run short of wafers. They ran short of wafers pointed at your product category. Consumer and commercial buyers paid more for standard memory through 2024. The price signal they received, the one that shaped purchasing decisions, product design cycles, and downstream device costs, reflected an allocation choice. Link 4 grades inferred, because the counterfactual, what prices would have been if the reallocation had not happened, is analytically derived, not directly measured. The second thing this chain hangs on is the question of whether that allocation choice was durable. Pricing power in a commodity market depends on the absence of a credible alternative supplier. For the three-firm structure to hold, there could be no fourth competitor capable of filling the gap the reallocation created. For most of the relevant window, that condition held. Then it began to shift. Changxin Memory Technologies, China's primary indigenous dynamic random access memory producer, has been scaling commodity double data rate 4 and double data rate 5 output with the explicit stated goal of competing in the low-end volume market where the three incumbents have deprioritized capacity. The company's expansion plans and product roadmap are reported in Chinese industry filings and covered in trade press. What is not yet independently confirmed by Western procurement audits or third-party technical validation is whether Changxin Memory Technologies has achieved the yield quality at volume necessary to export competitively priced commodity memory at scale. Reports come from company disclosures and Chinese industry sources. The link between their ramp and actual incumbent price pressure remains ahead of the data. Link 5 grades reported with the important caveat that the critical variable, yield parity on double data rate 5 at export competitive cost, has not yet been demonstrated in Western markets. That is soft ground, but the strategic logic is plain, and this is the third link the whole story turns on. The gap left by the reallocation was profitable for the incumbents precisely because no credible fourth supplier existed to fill it. The incumbents' decision to redirect capacity created the market opening. A state-backed competitor with explicit mandates to build indigenous memory capacity needed a justification to invest at scale. The incumbents handed it to them. The move designed to concentrate pricing power in three firms may be the one that finances its replacement. Follow the chain to its end. An artificial intelligence infrastructure boom generated a margin opportunity. Three producers took it by redirecting their fabrication capacity. Commodity double data rate memory supply tightened. Prices climbed. The buyers who felt the squeeze had no alternative supplier. The restriction did not sever the supply chain for the incumbents. It extended the profitability of their position and simultaneously seeded exactly the low-end opening that a state-backed competitor needed to justify its own scale-up. The artificial intelligence build-out, framed everywhere as a demand shock that drove spending higher across the semiconductor supply chain, functioned simultaneously as a supply shock to the commodity tier. Not because capacity vanished, because it was reassigned. The same event appears on both sides of the ledger, as the force that drove high-bandwidth memory investment and as the force that starved commodity supply. That is not a narrative most of the coverage of the memory market has drawn together, because the two effects show up in different reporting beats. The softest link in this whole account is the one between confirmed parallel behavior and alleged coordinated behavior. Analysts can document the timing. Litigants can argue the inference. What neither can yet produce is the communication, the record, or the agreement that converts parallel rational response into antitrust violation. The California case may surface that evidence through discovery. It may not. Until that is resolved, the legal theory and the confirmed economic mechanism sit in different evidentiary categories, and conflating them would be the kind of error this chain cannot afford. The chain from artificial intelligence demand to consumer memory prices is well grounded through the second link. The legal theory of coordination and the Changxin Memory Technologies disruption thesis are both real possibilities that the current evidence does not yet confirm. The shortage that was not a shortage may yet produce the competitor that was never supposed to exist. Watch the next 2 quarters of Changxin Memory Technologies shipment data. If volume and yield reports show competitive parity on double data rate 5, the allocation trade will have been the most expensive strategic gift the incumbents ever handed a rival. If Changxin Memory Technologies stalls at the quality threshold, the three-firm pricing structure holds, and the California lawsuit becomes the only live pressure point left. If that question is the kind you want tracked link by link, subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel follows the chain wherever it goes.